actually brought involved.
So we're in Isaiah 38. I was a little disappointed that y'all didn't finish Isaiah while I was gone. I had high hopes for you, John.
Yeah, but that's what would you have done?
I could have thought of a couple things. But we're almost to the good part, to chapter 40, I guess. And, so we're talking about Hezekiah. What's been going on with Hezekiah?
He got really sick.
Okay, he's going to get sick.
And dealing with the Assyrians.
Dealing with the Assyrians, okay. The Assyrians, they're friendly? No, not really. Trying to make nice, though, right? We're always trying to make nice with everybody. And what are you going to do? The Assyrians are going to, it's not a good situation. And Hezekiah is dealing with all of that. Anything else about what's been going on with him?
Well, he gave them a bunch of stuff, but it didn't really help.
Yeah.
So he turned to God after that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They're trying to make nice, trying to give them some valuables and that sort of thing, to buy time maybe. But that's not gonna. It's just more of the same, I guess, in what we've seen with the way Israel and Judah have tried to do business. The underlying problem that we've seen with God's people is, at least the way we've termed it, is a misplaced trust. And they're, on one hand, you'd say it's very reasonable what they've done in trying to make alliances and engage politically. That's a practical thing that they would have had to do regardless. The problem again is the perception that they have that's what they've got to do, that they have it within themselves to cut deals and engage politically, and they're not focusing on trusting God to protect them and to lead them. So here in chapter 38 is probably what Hezekiah is most remembered for. Some distressing point in his life where he's told that he's going to die soon. In verses 2 and 3, it says, Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord and said, Please, O Lord, remember how I've walked before you in faithfulness and with a whole heart, and have done what is good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. When he learns this news, it's crushing. Hezekiah is a complicated figure, at least in my mind, and I think that because of that, he's very relatable. I think he's very relatable because he's in the world and he's trying to deal with things in the world. Come on in, but he's trying to serve God at the same time. And things get out of balance and get out of sorts, and I think that's very relatable with us. Don't disconnect from Hezekiah because he was a king and he lived a long time ago, and that's kind of what happens to us. I think when we look at a lot of figures in the Bible, we don't relate to them because of their position and the fact that they lived so long ago. But in reality, he was a human being, just like you and I are, and he's conflicted. He's very conflicted, and that comes out in what he says here. What is he saying to God? What is his rationale as he's trying to process this news that he's going to die?
He was faithful and he did everything good on the Lord's side. He was pleading and asking him to extend it. He did extend his life. Yeah. So he's reminding God of all of what he had done, all of the good that he'd done. Cindy?
I was wondering, because his father was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I see the people, they go from being really horrible with bad leaders to why is Hezekiah even somewhat good with what he saw? And so there's that transition, you know, the people, not everybody was Hezekiah either, you know, so.
Yeah.
Then it's going even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, what's coming
He
is,
had a good mother.
yeah. Yeah. John said he must have had a good mother.
That's very possible because they had lots of different mothers.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wouldn't deny that for a second. Stephanie?
I was gonna say, I love how real his prayer was. It wasn't like all fancy and dressed up and, you know, ritualistic. It was just real, like heart to heart. Like,
Yeah.
you see me here, you've seen all that I've done. Please, like, it's almost like he's really trying to convince God. And I like that example because I feel like we need to be like that more with God instead of, being afraid to ask him for things or, being afraid to talk to him. We need to make sure that we're real with him, even if our real might feel like we're not being disrespectful, but we're being too much or something, you know, too detailed or too emotional or whatever, but I just like how real he is.
Yeah. It comes across that way because of, he's desperate. He's desperate. And so when a person's desperate, you know, you're just laid bare. You're vulnerable. He's realizing that he can't save himself. And I think part of his rationale is thinking that he could. He could save himself. Should have been able to save himself because all of the good he had done. And I think that's very common to how we think. When something bad happens and trying to figure out why is this happening, I'm a good person. That's what Hezekiah is saying. I've been faithful. What more could I have done? And with God, of course, God goes down to the core. He goes down to the core of who we are. And ultimately, yes, Hezekiah had there's no dispute. There's no dispute with the things that he had done. With Hezekiah, the problem is that at the core, what he's genuinely relying on in his life. And so here, he's desperate, but he's continuing to hold on to himself and to what he'd done, what the things that he had done. Again, when you compare that to what we have in the New Testament, how is a person saved? Are we saved by the good that we do? That's typically how humans think. We're saved by the good that we do. And that's why a lot of people today don't think they need Jesus because they're good people. And here is an example where Hezekiah, he's still relying on, well, I've been faithful. Look at what I've done. When in fact we're saved by grace, and it's always been true. It's always been true. Saved by grace through faith.
So notice his only request was to remember me. When we go to God, sometimes we already have our solution in mind, and we want God to perform our solution. But Hezekiah just says, "Remember me." He doesn't say extend my life. He doesn't say add so many years. He just says, "Remember me."
Yeah. And that's a great point. In that, who are we to decide what a solution is? Often, there's so much that we're not aware of in a particular situation. And so at least he does that much. He knows that God can make things right. I think is a fair assessment there.
David, there's one other thing. Whenever you read somebody was sick and they pray to God, you almost feel like they did something wrong and now they're turning to God. But it doesn't say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He might have just, do we know? He didn't get sick because God was punishing him. He just got sick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it might have taken, God knew he let him get sick because he knew that might even bring him closer to God. Do we know?
There's It's a lot there, but, no, but that's true, that when our life falls apart, then we go to God. You know, it's like, we'll say like, well, there's nothing else we can do, so we'll pray. And, there's probably some issues with that perspective, that, no, we can always pray, and that needs to be, looking to God needs to be the thing that we do first and foremost. So in verses 48, we find that God spares Hezekiah. The word of the Lord came to Isaiah. Go and say to Hezekiah, thus says the Lord, the God of David your father, I've heard your prayer, I've seen your tears. Behold, I will add 15 years to your life. I will deliver you and the city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and will defend the city. Then shall be the sign to you from the Lord, that the Lord will do this thing that is promised. Behold, I will make the shadow cast by the declining sun on the dial of Ahaz turn back 10 steps, and the sun turned back on the dial 10 steps by which it had declined. So there's a promise that is given to him, and there's a validation of that promise through this sign that we always remember about the sundial. And
what translation does yours say sundial? Because New American Standard says the stairway of Ahaz.
The stairway, I don't know that's
New King James says that too.
ESV
Okay.
says declining sun.
Declining sun.
Yes. I'm thinking moving 10 steps on a stairway
yeah,
is pretty significant. Moving 10 ticks on a sundial.
yeah,
I mean, that seems
That's
a lot more
interesting.
dramatic.
yeah,
I was curious.
yeah. I don't know. That's now I'm curious.
Yeah, and it's usually when there's a difference like that, it's noted in the margin, and it's not.
Yeah,
So I was just curious.
yeah. And then if you go over to 2 Kings, it would go forward, and he says, well, no, we'll take it backward because.
Yeah.
He gave him the option, said, you want it to go forward,
Yeah.
or you want to go backwards? He said, well, forward didn't show anything, we'll go backwards.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, you'd expect it to go forward. Always go forward, right? If you take it back, then that's a sure sign, I guess.
As if anybody could make it go forward.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Where's the line?
So, well, there you go. There's a nice happy ending, right? You get 15 years, and God's gonna take care of Assyria. He's promised deliverance, and so everything is right in the world for Hezekiah, for now at least. In verses 9 to 20, though, Hezekiah thanks God for his extended life, and
On timing, this occurs before chapters 36 and 37, because Hezekiah's life is extended before the Assyrians come and besiege Jerusalem. So this promise here about I will deliver you and this city out of the king of Assyria is made before the Syrians come and assault.
yeah,
And also, during that 15 years is when Manasseh was born, who was Cindy, one of the worst kings. Had a bad mother, apparently. So, it really had a big effect on the history of Judah from then on.
yeah. And we'll get into some of that with, I think, the next chapter. And, I think at the beginning we talked how Isaiah lives through that, and the legends are that he was martyred by Manasseh. So he's spared through Hezekiah's reign, only to meet his demise by Manasseh.
Something that maybe it's just the way I'm taking it, or maybe it's my translation, but from 9 to 20 doesn't seem like Hezekiah, and maybe that's the overriding understanding at that time, but it doesn't appear to be any sense of an afterlife, any sense of going to heaven.
Yeah. Well, let's read it first.
Yeah.
You're getting ahead of me.
Sorry.
That's okay. The prayer is great. It's interesting too that you contrast this prayer by the first one, and the first prayer at least what's recorded is relatively short, and where he's in distress. But then this prayer of thanksgiving is something altogether different. So verse 10, he says, I said in the middle of my days, I must depart. I am consigned to the gates of Sheol for the rest of my years. I said, I shall not see the Lord in the land of the living. I shall look on man no more among the inhabitants of the world. My dwelling is plucked up and removed from me, like a shepherd's tent. Like a weaver, I have rolled up my life. He cuts me off from the loom. From day to night, you bring me to an end. I calm myself until morning. Like a lion, he breaks all my bones. From day to night, you bring me to an end. Like a swallow or a crane, I chirp. I moan like a dove. My eyes are weary with looking upward. O Lord, I am oppressed. Be my pledge of safety. What shall I say? For he has spoken to me, and he himself has done it. I walk slowly all my years because of the bitterness of my soul. O Lord, by these things men live, and in all these is the life of my spirit. O restore me to health and make me live. Behold, it was for my welfare that I have great bitterness. But in love you have delivered my life from the pit of destruction. For you have cast all my sins behind your back. For Sheol does not thank you. Death does not praise you. Those who go down to the pit do not hope for your faithfulness. The living, he thanks you, as I do this day. The Father makes known to the children your faithfulness. The Lord will save me. He will play my music on stringed instruments in the days of our lives at the house of the Lord. So we've discussed some of the issues that Mike raises about what perception these people had about what happens after you die. We talked about that in reference to things about the resurrection. I think back in, I want to say in chapter 19 and maybe in 26, I think as well. And we talked a little about that and how, we read a text like this and we see things quite differently, understand things quite differently than they would have. And I'll point out, I think, some of those here in a second. But again, there are ideas that develop over time about what happens when you die, and man is always asked that question. The oldest book in the world is Job, and Job is asking that question: if a man dies, shall he live again? And there are even ideas of the afterlife that sort of parallel among the pagan world, because if you look at some of the ideas that come out of the pagan world that are somewhat similar with the Jews, you get to the point that there are a lot of people who were hoping that there was something good that would come when you die, that there was more to it than this, maybe is a better way to put it. That there was something, there's meaning and purpose. I mean, everybody tries to understand what life is about, especially understanding what's the point of suffering the way that we do in this world. There's got to be something more. And those ideas sort of run parallel. Those are, I think, just basic to the human heart. I mean, Solomon says that God instilled eternity in the hearts of people, and so it should not be at all surprising that you find people wondering about that. But here in this prayer, the focus primarily is on life in this world, and Hezekiah doesn't want to leave this world. Well, that seems to be relatable. We love life, and there's much. There's a lot of reasons why that's the case. Yes, there are things that we go through and that we experience that we don't love, that we don't enjoy, that we don't take pleasure in. But God gave life for the purpose of it to be enjoyed. There was nothing wrong at all with what God gave Adam and Eve in the beginning. Right? They had a great life, and of course that all changes. But you see from the very beginning that life was intended to be enjoyed by the God who gave it. In 17 and 18, You know, I think in light of having the full picture, we know who the branch is, right? We've, again, thinking about some of the way that these prophecies have come across in Isaiah. We know who the branch is. We know what the remnant's all about. We know who the Messiah is. We know who the suffering servant of the Lord is, as we're going to discuss later. And at least in my mind, there are that the implication of what the Messiah was going to do is in the background of what is stated here. 17, it says, "Behold, it was for my welfare that I had great bitterness. In love you have delivered my life from the pit of destruction, for you cast all my sins behind your back." I mean, that is essentially what Jesus does for us, right? He delivers us from the pit of destruction by casting our sins. But he takes our sins by this experience, despite the fact that he's been king, that he's had power, that he's had control. All of that looks like it's going to be ripped right away from him. And we've already talked about that kind of idea throughout throughout Isaiah, and how everything gets stripped away, and that's what Hezekiah has experienced. And but yet God has delivered him and put his sins behind him. Again, he's been humbled. He seems to have acknowledged his own sins in this process, and that in spite of his sins, God has saved him, spared his life. And so he has a very narrow scope of this. I think we see the big picture, though. Do you have any thoughts or ideas about what's stated here?
There seems to be throughout the Old Testament, a connection between sickness and sin. That the belief was that sin would bring on sickness. Mm-hmm. So that when Hezekiah is healed of his sickness here, he says, "You've cast all my sins behind my back." It's almost like he's thinking that way, that my sickness is gone, so therefore the consequence of my sins are gone.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the whole discussion of Job, and Jesus corrects that in his teaching when he comes, that it's not sick, sin doesn't cause sickness. Hezekiah seems to believe that way.
Yeah.
I think that his statement here in verse 10 too, "I am consigned to the gates of Sheol for the rest of my years." I'm puzzled about what that means. It implies that there's life after death.
Mm-hmm.
And we've commented before, and we see that implication throughout the Old Testament, that there is some existence after death. It's just not clear what it is, or what it's going to be like.
And the way this is structured, I mean, it's a prayer here. The way it's structured is, you see in the beginning is, I was going to die. Like I have no hope. I'm going to die. I'm consigned to the realm of the dead. And then eventually that all changes. And again, when you think about the gospel, the dying and rising again of the Messiah, and what that means for us, that is encapsulated in this prayer.
I think it kind of, in the opposite way, I guess, and it's kind of like what John was saying about what does that mean to consign to the gates of Sheol. I think this goes back to what you said about his reactions being very human and very relatable. I mean, he's just been told he's going to have 15 more years to live, which is great. He's not sick anymore. But to know exactly how much time you're going to have left, I think would weigh down on a person very much. So that's how I take it, especially from verse 10 to 16, is that he's saying, I don't have my life anymore. All of my days are numbered, and so I can't help but think on that. So every day I'm going to be in front of the gates of Sheol, because I know my death is impending, and like it's always there before me. It's not happening earlier. I know it's not happening later. I know the day. And so, I mean, I think that would weigh very heavily on anybody. I mean, he doesn't see men anymore. He doesn't see the Lord in the land of the living, because he just doesn't belong here anymore. He knows that the end is really near. But I think that's kind of where it goes into in 17, talking about like he was bitter for his welfare. He was bitter at first, knowing that he was going to live, but only for that set amount of time. But then I think the reassurance coming from God and his salvation is what brings him out of that pit, and knowing that he's living for
couldn't they? I thought that too, that he was given 15 years, but now, you know, what does that knowledge do to you? And the impact that it has.
And continuing on with what he said, I was going back to, pray to God. Wouldn't you love to pray to God and have a prophet come and tell you, yeah, God heard you and this is your answer?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great now?
Yeah, well, I don't know. You know, it's like I said, we hope you want to know when you're gonna die. Yeah. It's like Ahab. Ahab was, you know, do you have a prophet of Yahweh? We can tell, well, yeah, we do, but he never tells me anything I want to hear. So, yeah, be careful what you wish for, I guess. Anything else about that prayer?
Although it did say his health was restored, so
Yes.
there's that.
Yes.
Because having more time is one thing, but having quality of life is another.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that to be thankful for.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he was. And you know, what we find in 39 is sort of the epilogue of Hezekiah and the effect that this had on him. And so we see him. He just, you know, he's thankful and grateful, and now he has a job to do, right? He's got to go back and be king and deal with Assyria, and he just got to go about the business of the day. And so that's what happens. We've got the son of the king of Babylon sent envoys with letters. We're told in the first verse of 39, letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he had heard that he'd been sick and recovered. So what is this all about? News travels. News travels is a good point, right?
Even before the internet.
Even before the internet, yeah. Good news travels. You know, we know bad news travels fast, right? But here's good news, and again, you wonder how. Well, what about this envoy? What do you make of it?
Let's check him out, see what he's got.
Check him out. Let's see what he's got. Okay.
It may be that, again, Assyria is still in power at this time, so Babylon is just a minor player. So it may be that Babylon is looking for allies to combine against Assyria, and that's why they come to Hezekiah, to Judah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Yes.
Yes.
And put him on the to be conquered list.
Put it, yeah.
He's a definite. When he made his mistake, he started showing them everything.
Uh-huh.
I mean, are you gonna get people to tour your house where your safe is, where you have stuff? You're gonna tell them the combination of the safe?
Listen, I'm a preacher. I you know, I don't have a safe. There's none. I've got 2 kids, and that, you know,
Yeah,
they take it all. But no, but if you think about just how global politics works, I mean, you don't have to, like, we can understand what's going on here. It's yes and no, and sizing each other up, and of course Hezekiah is flattered by this whole display that he's given. And if there's one thing that all leaders have in common, it's an ego. Okay? Don't ever be fooled by a campaign speech or a little ad you see. They all have egos. Okay? You wouldn't, like, if you're going to be, you know, try to become president of the free world, I mean, just imagine the kind of ego you'd have to think that you could do it. And so you know, leaders have egos, and Hezekiah is no different than that. And he's flattered by this. Now, you think about, you know, Proverbs warns about flattery and the deception that flattery is. we all like for other people to come and tell us how great and wonderful we are, to be impressed by us in some way. And, what's the intention behind the envoy? With Hezekiah, I think they were shown more than they had anticipated they were going to see. He just, he showed them the store, didn't he? And he seems to be very confident.
I was just gonna say though, he also is lacking fear because he knows that it's time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's been removed from your life, you might be more open to show all that you have and all this because,
Yeah, what do you
you've
got
lost
to
any
lose?
fear. This guy's not gonna kill you that day and take your stuff because God's already told you got to do
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
that maybe why he was more willing than the average person to show that.
That's a great point. That's a great point. He has a clearer idea of his end than anyone else would have had. So he shows this treasure, and then eventually Isaiah comes back. You have to imagine that again. This would have been news of the day, right? When you have government officials from out of town, they're coming, and again, we know the news of the day, and when we're made aware when world leaders and dignitaries are in town and what they're doing and that sort of thing, we kind of get the headlines, and you can imagine that's gone on, and Isaiah finds out about it, and I just imagine Isaiah just pulling his hair out, thinking, you knucklehead. What? This is not. And of course, Isaiah, has always been around. He's always been part of that world, right? He's part of the aristocracy. He knows it through and through. He's a very wise, intelligent operator. He's not like Amos, who was the sheep herder, right? Who was called on to be a prophet. He's been very, very much a part of this world of the elites of his day, and he knows this was not a wise thing that Hezekiah does. And in my mind, at least, I just think Isaiah is just ready to lose it when he finds out what's happened. So here in verse 5, it says, here's what Isaiah says to Hezekiah. Hear the words of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days are coming when all that is in your house and that which your fathers have stored up till this day shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, says the Lord. And some of your own sons who will come from you, whom you will father, shall be taken away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. So in addition to Isaiah knowing what an unwise move this was, he comes with a prophecy from God about what's going to happen in the future. So this is not to be taken lightly. And he's told basically that everything you showed it's all going to be taken away, and your sons are going to be taken away, and they're going to be made eunuchs. That's signifying that your dynasty's coming to an end, your line's coming to an end, and this is quite devastating news. This is the last thing any king would want to hear. But perhaps because Isaiah knows, or Hezekiah knows the end, what's his reaction to this?
At least there'll be peace and truth.
Okay? Yeah.
Word of the Lord is good.
More what he said, more Lord.
Yeah. He doesn't dispute it. He's not going to argue with it. And I mean, he's experienced that enough to know that, hey, when God says something, then he means what he says, and what he says is going to happen.
Can be taken a couple different ways, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
In one sense, he's going like, okay, it's not going to happen, blah. Who cares?
Yeah.
Or he's, as the book says, it's not really supposedly that way. It's just reinforced that God's prophecy I personally take it as, what happened in my time, so I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, it's a baffling reaction. And again, I wish we had a little more information about, just in terms of what exactly he thought about it. I had a professor in college tell us once that, you hear politicians talking about the future all the time. We've got to do this, that, and the other because of the future. And the future, it's all about the future. And he said, in reality, the future doesn't matter. He says, you know why the future doesn't matter? He says, because you're not going to be part of it. It'll be somebody else's problem. And the point that he was making, from a very realistic perspective, is that's why problems don't get solved, because the people who are in charge aren't going to be part of that world. And I think there's some truth to that. He was not generally a cynical person, I don't think, but very pragmatic. And I kind of think that's what Hezekiah is saying, that it's he doesn't, okay, that's what's going to happen, that'll happen. It won't be my problem to deal with. And so you can take that for what it's worth. It seems to be a very different Hezekiah in chapter 39 from the Hezekiah of chapter 38. You think that's fair? I mean, that's my take. Again, I said at the beginning, Hezekiah is a complicated figure, and I think we can relate to somebody who goes through a desperate situation, looks to God. Somehow or another, there's a solution, and they're on the other side of it, and they're well, they're better, life is good, and then the further they move away from that moment of desperation, well, they're not as connected to God perhaps as they were in the time of desperation. I see a man the ego is taken over a little stronger in 39 than it was in 38. That's my take.
Good question. In the timetable, well, first, has Hezekiah already heard prophecy that Babylon will get Jerusalem and Judah? Has that already been prophesied? And then to that point, is Assyria already taken away? I mean, is Israel already taken into captivity by Assyria? Yes, okay. So now God has said, is this the first time that Hezekiah hears that Babylon is going to be the one?
I think so. Is that, John?
I didn't understand.
Is this the first time Hezekiah has heard that Babylon is going to take?
I have a footnote.
I'm not so sure about that.
I have a footnote that says, for 39:6, it says the first mention of Babylon as Jerusalem's conqueror, though chapter 14, verses 3 through 4 implied the Babylonian captivity. So it says it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that changes it. If he's hearing that, I mean, he knew they were going to be taken into captivity because of their sin.
Mm-hmm.
He just showed them everything God had given them and is going to lose it. That's not the reason they're going into captivity.
Right.
Because of all the riches. The real reason is their character.
Yeah. Years and years of all of the problems that we've talked about. Yeah.
I think Isaiah's questions are interesting too, and I've always wondered if he already knew the answer to them, because he says, what did these men say, or where did they come, and what did you show them? And I feel like that God had already revealed to Isaiah what Hezekiah had done, so that he brings this message. So he gives Hezekiah the opportunity to sort of confess what he's done, and then he delivers the Lord's message to him.
Yeah.
We do the same with our kids sometimes. We know the answer, but we want them to come up with the answer.
Right. And that could, that I'm sure that's in a commentary somewhere about how Isaiah is a representation of God and giving Hezekiah an opportunity to confess to what he did.
And unlike Mike, I think Hezekiah is an optimist here, so that his response down in verse 8 is, well, here is some bit of good in this prophecy you've given me that, you know, my family is going to suffer consequences because of this.
Didn't David say the same thing at the end of his life? Like, he knew all the bad stuff that was gonna happen afterwards, he was like, well, that's fine, I'm gonna be out.
I'll be here.
Yeah. But there's also, you know, there's some wisdom in knowing that, hey, something's not your battle. You know, you've lived your life, you've fought your battles, and, you know, what's in the future is not your battle to fight. There's wisdom in being able to recognize that, I think.
I do think it's interesting, I don't know if I thought about this a whole lot, just think about Hezekiah and his illness, that it had to have taken long enough, because, you know, no internet, you know, so people had to travel and everything, for the people in Babylon to hear first that he was sick, and then somebody had to make the trip back to find out where someone else had come from Israel to Babylon to tell them that they were well. Like, that's not a short journey. Like, you don't just, you know, ride over there on the weekend and come back, you know, which means that he had to have been sick for a while.
Like months and months.
Yeah. So this was not just like, he got sick over the weekend and the people from Babylon just showed up, you know, after he got, you know, better.
Right.
You know, I'm like, hey, we heard you got better, you know, got the text message and, you know, here we are. You know, at the end, that there had to have been some sort of relationship between Israel and Babylon by this point. Somebody had to have had a relationship with them, because, you know, or at least known by reputation who Hezekiah was. You know, otherwise they'd be like, who cares about that country over there? Like, we're not there yet. We're worried about Syria that's over here, you know, in our path. Like, who cares about little old Israel over there? So it just speaks to me of the importance of Hezekiah and who he was in the whole political world at that time. And as we know, I mean, Israel has just been placed in a very strategic place, you know, there in the Middle East for everybody coming through, you know, all that. I don't know, it's one of those things like, you can just gloss over real quick, you know, and he got sick and he got better, and that's, you know, the Babylon people show up, okay. You know, the more I think about it, I'm like, that's implying a lot. Like,
and
what's going on there?
you know, they had to walk. They had to walk.
Yeah, well, and
that from this point on the map down to Egypt, all the way up to Jerusalem, that was about a 2-month walk.
Yeah, and there could have been outposts along the way. You can imagine the nations, they have spy networks and people talk, and it's the way the world has always functioned. I know it's a stretch for us to imagine a world without transportation and technology the way we've got it. But nations have always been able to get communications and that sort of thing. But yes, it would have taken time for sure. But it shows you how everybody's connected. Some donkeys are faster than others. Yep.
You're also about 100 years or so from the first Babylonian taking away from Jerusalem.
Yep.
In Hezekiah's time.
Yep. About 100 years.
About 100 years in the future.
So real quick, we're about out of time. It's a good place to stop. The summary of 1 to 39. We've just seen judgment is coming to Israel and to the nations. Sort of a dynamic that we see throughout these, throughout the judgments that are given. There are glimpses of hope. We've tried to pick out those and highlight those. The overall lesson, I think, of the first 39 chapters is to keep faith in the Lord, and that's stated repeatedly. And then within 100 years, Isaiah's prophecies of judgment are going to be fulfilled. And so now we'll pick up in chapter 40, where we'll talk about hope. But on Wednesday, if you want to read whatever's on the schedule, probably 40 to 43. But we're going to go back and just do a little refresher on from the introduction that I did, so we know what's coming in the second half of Isaiah. Thank you.
Yes, but I wouldn't, yeah. But yeah, it's like everything.
Got it?
No,
And,
no, no.
yeah, okay. Thursday night.